So good evening and welcome to our meeting for the Feeder Alignment Committee. We have been doing quite a bit of work, and where we left off last time, we were looking at some of our scenarios. We were able to look at some draft scenarios and establish some pros and cons for the scenarios provided. We also have some additional scenarios that have been created that we can absolutely share out and discuss. And I guess what we could do is, we want to talk about maybe some new information first and then go over the activities that we had for homework. And then we can kind of rope some of those conversations in together. Does that sound reasonable? Okay, so let's start, Dan and Dorian. I guess I'll just turn it over to you with regard to some of the additional scenarios and thoughts that you were having about how we can look at our feeder alignment patterns.
Let me just say quickly, and I'll let you explain more. I think part of what happened since the last meeting was you said, okay, let's switch over our attention to the dual tab, which basically is not what we've been looking at before. So sort of separating that dual as its own schools. Now we have 12 schools instead of 11. But by looking at the dual tab with those same scenarios, dual is always the same as DCS. We didn't really separate it. We added the name to the list, but didn't actually separate it. Once we basically have permission to say, okay, dual can move freely like its own elementary school, which it now is, that opens up millions of more possibilities. We don't want to go through millions. That would not be a good use of our time as a committee. But it seems like by being able to move it around, that lets us achieve better score balance, better equity, better some of the other goals of like less disruption for families. Different scenarios are going to achieve different things. But just by being able to move it, it gave us more possibilities. So I'll let Dan go.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd just say, like, when you're doing the assignments and the smallest school is in the 40s, you just have a lot less flexibility than if you have a 20 that you can just move around. So it increased by hundreds of %, the amount of choices we could model. So I don't know if you want to bring it up or if you want to just look at the sheet.
But this is the way of the process, and we had narrowed down to our final ones, and it's like, wait a minute, we're reading a but I think some of these may actually solve some of the problems of those earlier scenarios.
Yeah.
So it may be worth.
So, I don't know, I'll just scroll through it. I'm hold on, let me make it, so you can see it. So. All right. Let's see what we have going on. Okay, so, we looked at scenarios 24 through 28, and in some ways, like, just in a bigger picture, we're trying to average the schools. So like inherently, we're trying to get everyone to the average. You could see right here, this is the district average, and Myers and Hackett are above it. So in some sense, we're here to take points from Myers and Hackett and give them to North Albany to get everyone to the district average. And so any square that is green on Myers and Hackett, to me shows we took points from either Myers or Hackett and then we gave it to Myers or Hackett. That like, we don't want green squares showing an improvement on Myers and Hackett because that just indicates they went above the district average, which isn't really what we want. And similarly, like 2 red squares indicate huge drop. I mean, these are 10-point drops. So we're taking 10 points out of these schools in order to, improve North Albany, but this is a huge hit. So we started trying to say like, well, can we smooth it out? Can we take less from Myers and less from Hackett? Because that's, what you got to do. So when you move over and you go to 29, and they're all pretty balanced on population, like we kept it, they're fine.
You mean in terms of enrollment numbers? Yeah,
enrollment numbers. Like they're all in the same kind of range that go about 650. We have one that goes above it. It has some things going for it, so we thought it was worth talking about.
And what are the new numbers? What are these? 29?
Yeah, from 29 over, everything's new.
So everything's new, but
you'll see, it's like so, you start with 29 and you go, okay, look, it's this, I guess, let me just back up. 28, which I really wanted to keep in last time, and in some ways I wanted to keep in over busing, like over nothing else. And so everything we built after this originally started as me modeling a busing thing. So that's what the green squares are. This was just who gets busing in every scenario. And so.
So just to clarify, because I didn't understand this until today, if it has a green heading at the top, that means Dan believes almost everybody will qualify for busing, which
Yeah.
you know has been important to him and not necessarily important to everybody.
Well, that might not be important, but so the
But
20.
But it's labeled now with a color, which I didn't understand until, again, until a few hours ago.
So like 28, I wanted to keep it in over busing, but ultimately it doesn't improve North Albany's math score out of the single digits. That has to kill that as a scenario. And so, you say, okay, let's start trying to improve it more. You kind of go through it. 29, it improves Myers. I just don't think we're here to improve Myers. 30, it takes huge hits out of both Myers and Hackett. So you start saying, well, okay, can we just do it less? What can, like, let's not take as much from Myers and Hackett and let's just do it less. So you start moving over and, you go, okay, so you get to 34, you're still not improving North Albany. You're improving it a little more, and you start getting, okay, start saying, okay, well now here's where it starts getting into like the acceptable range. Like you've improved it close enough to the average that we're all like recognizing it's not going to be perfectly even, but it starts getting acceptable. So then, you start at 39. I would say these are like the 8 good scenarios. They all either, 39, it basically doesn't touch Myers or Hackett. Like you look at it, it doesn't take any points from Hackett. It takes like a couple of points from Myers and it improves North Albany. 39 is really similar to 44. It takes basically nothing from Hackett. And it starts doing it like that. So I think that this is really like the colors you want to see. Like you want to see Myers and Hackett going down as little as possible, not improving. And you want to see North Albany improving as much as is possible. And because that's like, it's going to get all 3 closest to the average. So, in that way, I think they all are like, from here, they're all like pretty similar. They solve the problem. So then you kind of get into like population balance. So, I think they all have pretty much one out of place except 43 and 44. Those are like perfectly balanced. So you go to 43 and 44, and then you go up to the school changes. You can say, okay, 43 and 44 are either, they're between 4 and 6, so they all have a reasonable amount of school changes. I didn't quite know what to do with the idea of a limit of 6 changes when I added another school, when I added dual. Like, are we saying 7 changes is okay? I didn't really know, so I kept it in. But, I think that's sort of the thinking that like green on Myers and Hackett is bad, and we're, but then you get into like 43, it takes 2 over 5-point bites from Hackett. I might say that like 43 versus 45, I'd rather only take 1 5-point bite. So I think that's really like, I guess I've gotten away from busing if we just say like, well, everyone will figure it out. I thought it was important, but, I defer. But I think ultimately it's like, we're here to take points from Myers and Hackett, and we're here to give them to North Albany, and anything that gives points to Myers and Hackett, it took too much from one and either didn't give it to North Albany when it should and kept it for a school but like, I think that's ultimately the problems that you'd see in like 24 through 28. It's like, for Hackett to get a 5-point increase, I don't know, it seems like not what we want to do. Same thing, where we have 2 5-point decreases. It's like we could just do better by Hackett and Myers than that.
Something the new ones there, you make it a little bit bigger. But
I'm looking at it here because I can't see. You can move up.
Oh, wait, that's wrong.
But I guess what look at, if you scroll down, can we look at those? This ones are the ones that you think are the best?
Yeah, I think in talking with Dorian, like 42, and I'll let you sell 42. I mean, there's stuff to be said for each. So like 42, you could say it improves Hackett a bunch, but it's also just not that out of line with anything else. So a lot of this is just like a weird trade where it's like, I don't know why I can get a 17 math score and improve Hackett here, and I get an 18 and I kill Hackett here.
And some of it is going to also change. I think some of it is going to also change when this, so the test scores we're using are a good indication, but those are not, like, they're projections of how other kids might do, which is a fair, I mean, it's a good estimate, but it's not an absolute, right? So, can we go down to and see what are the models, what the models look like?
Hold on, let me try and make this.
Yeah, for school.
Hold on, I'm
And some
trying.
of my values, as a true for each of us, aren't necessarily exactly the same as Dan. So I'm interested in getting scores that are close to each other. So if you look at the scores from 3 schools, I want them to be close. I'm not as concerned about Meyer, Rappaport, and Hackett. When if the scores are close, that's fine. That's the goal of that balance. It's interesting that you would think those are the same thing, but they're not always. And then I think some of the other ones that Dan would say, well, I don't like this one as much. I would say, well, that's true. It's weaker on that, but it's stronger in there are fewer schools changing. And I think we're going to get less fallout from the parent community the fewer schools we move around, or the more kids are going to the middle school that's closest to where they live. So some of them have other strengths that aren't, that, you know, are we willing to sacrifice and say, well, they're not quite as balanced, but they have other strengths. So I think that's, in some cases, some of these scenarios have that, and that's why. In some cases, I was like, let's hold on.
I'm trying to just make all of it appear.
I don't think we're gonna see that it's gonna require some scrolling. I think like 90% is fine.
Yeah.
Part of what it is we're not gonna be able to see the
There.
scores at the same time.
Yeah, no, yeah. What is that? Make it bigger, I'll do whatever. But I guess, so if you look at like, you know, we're trying to balance like 5 things, it's like what, we're trying to hit, we're trying to make a 3-pointer with a golf ball we hit with a baseball bat, like that's what balancing all these things are to me. And so you could say, I mean, I would say 44 looks great, it only makes 4 changes out of 12. It pretty much balances them, it basically doesn't touch Myers and Hackett. And the population is balanced.
But I would need to like,
But yeah.
no, scroll down to where it talks about the population, just leave it there.
Oh, wait.
Make it a little bit bigger. So we can like, cause different, we have similar things, we have similar,
I'm sorry, bigger? Is that good?
yeah.
But I can't see it all.
Well, okay, we have to scroll back.
We may have to scroll, it's okay to not see it all, but it's, like when I was doing this form, there were several factors that I was assessing and taking notes on. Like I was looking at transportation, I was looking at scores, I was looking at this, I was looking at this. So I see what you're saying about the scores, I see what you're saying about the change in schools, I see what you're saying about transportation, but I need it like right there to look at some of those other factors. You said for like 44 as an example?
Yeah, so I think 44 is the highest on the most categories. I think you'll find things that are better in every category, but if you're looking at like, you're just collecting its scores on 5 metrics, I would say it's 1, 2, or 3 on all of them, and nothing else is just that consistently good. But that's also like clearly an opinion, like I'm valuing, a certain amount of busing or, I don't know.
I have a question about, actually, the superintendent, about the, does it make a big difference if the school, if one school is 600 and the other one is 650 or 670? That doesn't make a difference does it make it more difficult in planning and staffing and creating teams that would create the programming essentially?
Those numbers are very close together. Where you run into the problem is when you have like, let's say, the school that's that could be like 495 and then the school that's 650. That's too broad of a range.
Okay.
If you're in the high 500s and the low 600s, so like 590 or so, and then you're like 600, 620, those are numbers that you can work with because they're close enough together. Now, will there be some nuances? Absolutely. because, we're talking broad numbers, but we're not talking actual schedules of kids. So we try to keep them, if we're 600, 650, that's a good number, because then they're gonna pretty much be, 2 deep or whatever the case may be. They'll be within the same range.
But is 40 like out? Because 40, I actually like 40 and 44 are fairly similar. Like all these are really just like variations on a theme. They're all just moving it a little bit. So like 40, if you look at the grades, it's a little more.
Myers almost at seven.
But that's what I'm saying. Myers is that too big? 572.
If I'm on the worksheet, would it be live for me?
Okay, so that's good to, I'm sorry.
Is this, if I'm looking at here, am I gonna be looking at the same thing you do?
Yes.
So if you're looking at 572, and then you're gonna look at a school that has 698, which is basically 700, that is too broad of a.
That's, yeah.
Okay.
That's huge.
That's why I asked.
And that's,
Talking almost 100 more.
that's the biggest range we end up with. I don't think we end up with anything over 50 anywhere else.
Well, there's.
Could you go back to 26?
Yeah. Where, up, down.
Right there. There.
26 was the basis of 40. That's what I started tinkering with, because I like 26.
And then now scroll so we can see the breakdown.
Schools.
But so like you look at the grades of 26, and it's like North Albany's 17, 16, 17, and you go to 44, and it's about kind of the same, So like but it only has 4 changes. But so, yeah, I mean, I agree, out of the first 5, I picked 26.
Would you go down though?
Can I ask you a question I asked by email, which is, are we allowed, if we split dual, if we send dual to a middle school, it's not active. We have the older students in practice together and the new incoming sixth graders at a different middle school. That means that at least one Spanish teacher has to teach at 2 middle schools a day. Is that allowed by union rules? Like, can we do that even though it's
It
not the
is,
ideal?
but what we would look to probably do is staff. Versus if we had enough students for 2 full-time teachers, then we would staff each building.
Okay, so you basically need a new teacher, a new Spanish teacher teaching.
But how many do you have now for the dual kids? Do you have 2 teachers?
There's 2 in the middle
Yeah,
school.
there's 2 in the middle.
So I mean, could you just make one teach 7th and 8th and one will teach 6th, and then
Depends
year
on-
2, you'd make
Depends
one
on
teach
where they are with
6th?
certification, but ideally, you may have to split them. One would have to be at one school, one would have to be at another school, but they wouldn't have to go, one person
Yeah.
go.
It's a big, the different things are taught different years, so for the teachers, it's a big like, okay, it's like teaching a whole new class.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a thing, I guess it's one teeny tiny detail. But it does take time, each time a new teacher gets up and running to be like, okay, this is what this is. It takes, a year or 2 to get a new teacher up.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a question, like that, it also really, really limits it. So if you're like dual has to be at Hackett, that's super cool, that's fine, but it
And a
also,
bunch of these good scenarios have that.
Yeah.
It's not that we don't have that option.
but it's saying any one particular school has to stay still ends up limiting it a fair amount.
Cooperative ones, this is the school.
For what, for 26?
Yeah.
I guess this is another question of like, I don't know how well, I guess, these population estimates will hold. Like Sheridan grew 10 kids on that paper you gave out, right? And New Scotland dropped 20. But is that, that's the question, like, does it
But
change
that's going to
cyclically
be
or-
normal when you're doing, because population shifts happen all the time. So we would just look at where we are. And based on the projections that we have right now, that's what we would have to make the decisions on.
But so in that sense, like, having them all be green at the beginning will probably buy you an extra year or 2. Because if it started at 676, like, in 1 year, it could go off the rails.
Sales market in my neighborhood has sold a number of houses out of 80 houses, and I think there's 4 kids that have started at Eagle Point after they've lost the 2 that were going in. So they've doubled in my neighborhood. And I think that's gonna happen more and more with the sales market that's happening right now.
Well, I guess we started this with me kind of joking when I was building this and being like, listen, I'll never be able to build something that doesn't take points from Hackett and Myers, that doesn't change any schools, that builds bounce back. And like, I feel like, to me, the real question is, does 44 do enough for North Albany? Because any scenario that basically changes note alignments and doesn't take any points from Hackett and Myers seems like you won half the battle. Like, parents and everyone right there.
What do you mean by changes no alignment?
Only 4 schools change alignments, which is what this yellow, it's like those are the only 4 that are different.
It's essentially Eagle Point and Pine Hills are now, in this scenario, they go to North Albany, right?
I mean, essentially Eagle Point and Arbor Hill have the same test scores, and they're about the same as Pine Hills, they're a little lower. So like, those are the 3 most average schools, basically. And so they all go there and they hit the district average, they're all the average schools. And then the other ones are built by like, you know, putting it together a little different. But I don't know, and then you could say for 44, it's like, it just doesn't change, like, where people are used to. So, you know, Ash and Montessori and New Scotland stays still, ECF stays still, I don't know.
But a lot of people have said they want to get magnets, one magnet at each school, right? It's 44, no, 44 doesn't do that.
That's not important to me, but I know it is important to some people.
Yeah, that's what's been mentioned. I have no.
So it puts Ash and Montessori at Myers.
As they are now.
Yeah, as they are now.
As they are now.
I don't know, I mean, I'm happy to build, and Dorian and I have been playing with this, so we ended up with so many of these. So like, anything you all can name, I could build it in like 30 seconds. So like, any change you want, it's fine with me. But it just gets like.
I'm looking at 44, but I'm digesting it with the
Yeah, I'm going back
things
to
that I
it, you
did
can
last night.
punch everything.
I mean, it's not terrible, I get it. One of the things I looked at, which is unavoidable in many situations, there's always going to be that one, is when I looked at the plot map, Pine Hills will be traveling a bit in comparison to what they're used to, but I don't think there's any scenario that avoids at least one school, and at least it's not Gifton traveling really, really far away. Pine Hills is at least.
I mean, the one thing I could say about Giffen going to North Albany is I could picture running a bus up Pearl, which is fairly straight shot, way easier than I can picture running a bus down through the city at that hour. So like, driving from Pine Hills, you're not by the highway, like at least Eagle Point, you just jump on 85 over by the state campus, and you just take 85 to 90, you'd go down. So like Eagle Point could probably get to North Albany pretty easily. Pine Hills might actually be like the toughest trip in the city, because there's no easy way to do that. Like, and you're not already downtown like most of the schools, so you're like, that's a tough ride. Like, what do? I guess you shoot down Western.
No, in my head, I think, because as I was looking at this and trying to figure out like what to say, the schools and neighborhoods that are on the north-ish part of the town, of the city, all have, even Pine Hills, that neighborhood has an easy access to the highway to get to North Albany. Because from where Pine Hills is right now, you can get on 90 and get.
Oh, yeah, like Everett Road.
That's true. Same for Montessori. Yes.
Yep.
And same for Eagle Point, because the neighborhood, right? That you can all very easily do that. and Skylar, that's right there also. So in my head, you could run buses, and anyone who drives, actually, it's probably an easy drive, I think. Yeah, maybe, but
Well, but I also see when I look at this map, there is a definite area condensing, but Pine Hills compared to some of the others, not compared to some of the other non-magnet schools,
Yeah.
actually does spread out. When I look at this map, it really does spread out. So making a decision on like this, you still have like a bunch of other kids still kind of out there, no matter, for whatever reason, you got, I don't know how many, I don't know if each blue person is a kid, but you got like 6 of them by North Albany already based on this, I know this thing. And then you got some that are way on the other side of town, so it makes it hard, transportation should be considered, but something's it's not gonna be able to be perfect.
yeah, but so, based on, maybe I'm off a little bit, but based on this, I think it's crazy. I think it's easy for these people to get on the highway and get to North Albany.
Or across the town,
But that,
so to get to North Albany, yeah,
okay,
yeah.
It
The
might
North
be-
Albany is the blue arrow.
Right, but, out in the Pine Bush, with the kids in there, it might be even more difficult to bus them in. Right now, we go right by Eagle Point to, Hackett. And it's not too difficult, but I've seen some of those routes that the other 2 buses take. And some of the, it's not easy, it's not an easy bus.
Or that people.
This is where Eagle Point, yeah, so
Yeah.
we go down here and then go pick up the kids all the way and then straight through. It's a, what would be considered a straight ride to Hackett. If we went to North or probably Myers would be a straight through, but North, I'd be curious what that route would look like, because it would be,
You just jump on the highway by the mall. and you
yeah, but you gotta pick up kids on the way. You can't just jump on a highway. 'cause-
No, oh, yeah, but like, to me, I guess, and you guys, I'm curious, like, how busing goes, but like, to me, it's busing, you're not allowed by state law to have a kid on a bus for more than an hour, just flat out can't. So the very first kid who gets picked up, clock starts ticking. And so, as I think of the bus routes, it's like a max of 40 minutes of pickup time, and then there's that 20-minute travel time, and that's kind of how you have to set your clock, so like, I think it could be, I don't think that'd be great, I hear you, I'm just saying, like, it's not like we're gonna be like, if it was too far away, they'd have to send more buses, because you just can't have kids on a bus for more than.
I'd be curious to see bus routes for like all 3 schools. Something like this.
so can we go back to the original question though, like, I do hear that the actually having an option, for transportation. Have the ability to drive or don't want to drive, don't want to go drive, let's get to the school, right? But I think, to me, the important piece here is to create schools who are going to be able to be diverse, who are going to have programming that is diverse and meet students' needs and help them not only meet the needs, but also exceed expectations, or has the potential of exceeding expectations. And I will say that I'm surprised to see in the new models that, and it kind of goes to the perception of, and not necessarily reality, I was a proponent of having a magnet in each middle school, one magnet in each middle school, and this modeling right here, it shows that, in fact, that's not really important. If we're trying to create schools that are roughly, that have students that based on this, we can project that they perform similarly. I'm not so sure that it will stand the test of time, I don't know, but it kind of surprised me to see that that's not a factor, that putting one magnet in each school actually boosts performance enough. So that's.
I don't, yeah, the magnets don't all perform similarly enough that
There were not
they
many
serve the
performance
same
that are on the house.
function in the map. Yes.
Well, so when I look at 44, and then you're using like 26, or even 25, 25 and 26 are very similar. I mean, 44 is not horrible, but when I consider some of the other factors, I don't find it better than 25, when I consider some of the pros and cons. So not, because when I say that, like, there are factors about 44, like the fact that less schools lose their, like, existing theater. But, the question is that enough in comparison to what 25, some of what 25 and 26, like when I look at transportation, and again, it's that piece of would people rather be, which I know the survey went out, but would people rather be further away from their schools so they get transportation, or would they rather be closer? But the transportation piece, between 25 and 26, the numbers aren't horrible. Transportation isn't horrible. There's a couple of places that it's not ideal, but it's not horrible. Score-wise, so I do not disagree with everything you're saying about score-wise and wanting to bring up more quality, but I feel like if the district, whatever these alignments turn out to be in the scores, these are like predictive scores, right? Am I recalling correctly?
No, I think there's a state.
So it's like an average of what.
Average of where we're at, right?
Is this the average of the last 3 years?
Okay.
Okay.
So I feel like if the district knows that there's this potential risk, they can prepare for that in advance. You can't control for, like, we can't have 700 kids in a school. You can't, you have to be able to control that in advance. You can't react to 700 kids in a school. You're either going to have them in school or not. Transportation, we can plan and prepare for that. I feel like there's some ability to prepare an intervention for these specific scores. So I'm not saying the scores don't matter, but I feel like there's an ability to address that if we take care of everything else. So,
Yeah, but if there was an ability to address it, we would have just addressed North Albany using whatever ability that is. Like, that isn't true.
well,
Like,
except
we can't just,
there's not the, and again, I'm not using diversity as a race overall, there's not the diversity right now in North Albany. And so you can address it, but you address it with more mix of schools.
Yeah,
which is what mixing the test scores.
No, there's still a mix, but what I'm saying is, I'm just using 25 because I'm pointing to it. If you're looking at 25, they know they need to be a little bit more prepared for what this might be for North Albany's English and Myers math. Like, they'll know that and can be prepared for that, as opposed to the current alignment, which is, it just is where it is, period.
Yeah, I mean, I guess
The
part,
math scores of 25.
Huh?
We got a huge dip in the prediction of the math scores at Myers with 25.
Yeah.
26 does balance out.
A little bit better.
A little bit better. I mean, you still have the number of changes, and that's something that was discussed,
I think this gets into the weird permutations of it, right? That 25 and 26 are the exact same thing. It's just that Myers and Hackett flipped. And so in some ways, that's like another interesting thing to talk about, that like putting the same kids with the same scores, it's still something to consider what it does to the school itself, right? That like, that 13 in 26, right? That's perfectly fine because it's only 4 points below the average and it's only a 4-point drop from where they came from. So it doesn't feel like a hit to Hackett. Where over here, this 13 is a 10-point drop. That feels like a hit on Myers. And so like, that's what's experienced by the teachers who still have to teach in the school. And that's what's experienced by the 7th and the 8th graders, that you don't want to watch their school change around them too much, I feel like. So like, that. So that's why, like, 25 and 26 are the same, but in that way, like, that's why I like it in 26 way more than 25, because on 25, it's like, wait, you're giving 5 points to Hackett? That doesn't seem right. Wait, you're taking 10 points from Myers? That doesn't seem right. But then just by like moving them, it doesn't feel like an attack on us. We're not, attack is the wrong word, but it's not.
Well, you're saying 26, you still are looking at the success of the kids, just when you look at that particular piece, where each group, each school still has success. And you are, in a sense, I mean, even though I know this is not necessarily 3 years from now going to be the same thing, but you're at least looking at how they balance out. And then now you do have an opportunity to have very consistent instruction.
I mean, if there's a consensus that there are some of the original 5 to remove, can we remove some of those and put 44 as a replacement? I mean, that's a potential.
Of the original 5, I would keep 26 and see which of the last 5 you want to boot out. Because they're all way more balanced, both on population and on grades, and they take less alignment changes, like getting dual.
Wait, what do you mean,
Like 40, what is it, 46, of 42 to 46, like pick one to drop and then let's put 26 there. Because I guess I just feel like.
oh, I'm still on 24 through 28 and dropping one of those and throwing in.
That's what I'm saying,
Throwing
all of
44.
these are better than.
Subjective, that.
Well, all of these take fewer points from Myers and Hackett to achieve the same improvement at North Albany while balancing population and taking fewer alignment changes. So while I would call that better, you're right, I guess it's, but in that way, like, that's what I was trying to address. I was like, the failures of 24 are that you take 2 huge bites out of.
Say that again?
Yeah.
No, I just said that, like in 24, that red,
Yeah.
that's a huge decline for the schools.
Yeah, so, I mean, it's like 2 big declines, I dropped that. 2 big declines and a 5-point improvement, I dropped that. 26 looks great. 27's, I guess, fine too. 28, it doesn't improve North Albany. So like of these original 5, I would keep 26 and 27, and the other 3 have like major problems. And so then,
27, I'm with that 10-point drop.
although the one thing you could say is these are the colors I would expect to see if everyone moved toward the average. So I would expect Hackett's English score to drop more than 5 points because it's more than 5 points above the average. You know, I don't know I'd expect it to drop that far, but, you know,
That's a big drop.
I would expect a red square on Hackett's English scores. But like, yeah, so I mean, it's like 2 big drops, I think that's not good. 2 drops and a 5-point improvement, I don't think that's good. I mean, 26, I don't like Myers improving, like, I don't think Myers or Hackett should be improving. Because it's.
I don't mind the
It's just
drop
moving
to
across.
25 for math, for Myers, because look at English, it goes up, as well as Hackett, that goes down in,
Well, yeah, but it drops.
it goes up in math. I mean,
Yeah, but they're not like, they're not that related to variables, so like, it kind of are, smart kids will be smart, but like,
it seems like some kids are smarter in math than English.
you're talking about a 50% drop in the raw math score of a school, that's a big, I just think a big hit like that, it's like, it's not necessarily out, I think we're gonna have to take big hits, because that's what it is to average it, right? But it's about like, well, can we do it better. So like, I'm not saying 24 and 25 are bad, that's why they were finalists last time, I'm just saying like, well, maybe we could,
25 looks like it's a 15% improvement in English and a 30% drop is my guess, maybe probably 40% in math.
okay, but it takes the math points from Myers and gives them to Hackett. It's just the wrong thing to do.
But North Albany goes up and everybody.
Right, so it takes way more than it needs to from Myers, and it takes that extra in order to give it to Hackett. That like, Myers and Hackett should really be viewed, unfortunately, as donor schools right now. Like, they're not.
Yeah, I think they're just placeholders. We could just call them A, B, and C. I just think if the goal should just be to get the numbers close together, it doesn't matter exactly. The points go from Hackett to Myers.
Well, but it matters to people in the school, so that's why 26, I would say, is better than 25, because there are gonna be kids and teachers left who are gonna be like, whoa, he just took 50% of my math in my school away, like, it's, I guess I feel like there's the new students, and that's what the raw numbers themselves like mean, and that's like, I'm an incoming sixth grader, this is my number, but like, to me, the colors are really more about like the teachers and the students left.
But to me, I think we could do a color coding, and I made a copy and did build some of this, where you just look at how far apart, how far apart, how big is the gap?
Yeah.
So if you look at 27, you say, okay, from 18 to 29, okay, 11-point gap, and in math, it's 14 to 23, so it's a 9-point gap. And if you just look at the size of the gaps and say, okay, our goal is to just have the smallest gaps, that worry is less about exactly who's the donor and who's the receiver, and sort of, to me, that makes more sense to just look at the smallest gaps without worrying as much about, yeah, as you said, there are going to be changes, but there are going to be so many changes, and I'm not sure. To me, it doesn't make sense to say, oh, this poor school lost. Because they also lost a significant percentage of their students, because there's just a giant crisscross, whatever, all these scenarios are
Can you
going
go
to
back? I'm sorry. Just
What?
scroll over to the last ones. Okay, just a quick second. So are we ready to, it was about 10 minutes of 7. Are we ready to look at some scenarios that we would want to, we already have several here that we've done the pros and cons. We may have to add a couple more, and we can do that. And then we know that we're not deciding on one, but we're looking at what are some possible scenarios that we can at least start to have that conversation with the board on December 2nd. Because this is great. It's great conversation, and understand, this is exactly the conversation that the board is going to want to have on the board floor with the committee members, to just kind of iron out what was the logic, what was the thinking behind it, and then what are some of the pros, what are some of the cons, and then to just have that open discussion. So,
I have a quick question,
yes.
because I'm wondering if, not completely wrong, but just so I have an understanding of looking at it. When I'm looking at the report, I look at whatever it's like, maybe 46 on the screen, right? So I'm comparing that 27.5 to the district average or to?
No, I'm sorry, on this tab, that indicates what happened to the old school to the new school. So the 27 is green because from this 13, it went up to 27, which indicates more than 5 points up.
Yeah.
So it's not really relative to the average on this tab. I tried doing that on this tab, and it ends up like it's just not, it's not as useful as I thought.
One of the things that was part of the conversation was, and I'll say it in my own words, but what I took away was the do no harm. So maybe it's not necessarily looking at the red square, but it's looking at those scenarios where there are no red squares at all, because it may assist with balancing things out. But that's just a consideration, because those were some of the things that we talked about, in that we want scenarios that don't do harm to a school.
Now, the depth of that degree, be it improvement or moving, what that prediction is going to be, do you want to have a criteria that says at least this or at least this amount of improvement? You may not, but at least showing that the predicted outcomes would not decrease, but show increase. And that's just part of the discussion that we've had before.
Yeah, and just to add one other thing there, Myers Middle School, for instance, is in accountability status to be improved. So it's not that there's, right now, as of 2 years ago, Myers needs to improve its scores for, I think we're both not in English, no. So that's, for us, we should need to think about that in exactly what you just said, to not have it go red, because that will make things potentially worse. Or improve, or even if it goes a little bit green, it's not a bad thing, because all of our schools need improvement. All of the middle schools need improvement, period. So shuffling schools around might actually do that, and help students do better. So that's, I'm only agreeing with your point statement, that we need to not have reds in what we decide, if we're going to take a treatment as one of the things that we're going to think about.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we look at scenarios 24 through 28? Let's start there. Are there scenarios that you want to keep from those?
26 and 27 are worth keeping.
Yeah, I'd say, I agree.
Looking at something related to 27 right now, I don't know.
No, we're only keep 26, well, based on what I just said with the no rec squares.
Yeah.
And in addition to that, the population difference, right, between 6 and 675.
Yeah, the issue I had with 27, without even looking at the test scores, not that we're not considering those, is the distance and the 675 at Myers.
Yeah.
I'd go with 25 even.
I would go with 25 before I would go with 27, although the 25 is
Yeah.
issues with the scores.
I might go with 25.
And I don't think we have any that have no rankings.
We do.
Well, 26 would be that one.
Yeah, but there's some more of the new ones. Here, that's the only one. 25, 26 is the only one that doesn't have a red square.
Oh, it doesn't have any dark red. I was,
Yeah, nothing.
No, okay, so that makes sense. I'm like, no, I'm looking at.
Although I would say, I would expect Hackett's English score to be dark red, like it's more than 5 points above the district average, so to bring it in line with the district average, I would expect it to drop 5 points, that to not have red is almost like you're leaving it a little too high. So that's like, if I want to criticize 44, it's the same criticism as 42, it's that I'm leaving Hackett too high relative to what I'm trying to do. But then the flip side of saying, on the opposite of that is, look, 44 does enough for North Albany, because if I did the same thing for Hackett like I did in 43, it would have been fine. So like, they're at least in line, it's not some like single digit, you left it hanging.
So for 24 through 28, we will be looking at 25, 26, and 27. Those three?
I'd probably only be at 26.
I would too, I think,
I would either do 25 and 26 and just 26. 25 has its benefits, but the scores kind of make it not worth it.
Okay, so now I'm gonna do tallies, because I'm getting close. I am getting close. I like this. So 25, how many of you would go, because we're gonna look at 25, 26, and 27.
How many votes? How many votes?
So we're ruling out 24?
Well, right now, we're gonna look at, because we have to do the others as well. So we're gonna do, what, 5? Because we were saying 5 scenarios, is that reasonable? So 5 votes.
I don't know, are we ready to vote on it, like, do people clear enough sense of which ones they like?
Not up there yet.
The
No,
later-
not up there yet, let's just do these, so,
We're trying to rule what we're trying to keep, what are we?
yeah, we're gonna narrow down from last week. So 25,
Keep, voting to keep it?
yes. Okay. 26. I thought that was unanimous. Yep, that's unanimous. 27.
Yeah.
I'm still iffy, but.
Although the
Put it
population,
out there.
Yeah, that's the one thing about it.
Well, population and travel, but I think we can just at least get it out there.
Yeah, we can keep it.
Out of these 5,
let's pick 8 right
So
now,
out of
then
your,
we'll know
out
what
of
we
your,
want.
out of your 5 from last week, out of your 5 from last week, first choice is 26,
Yep.
second choice is 25, and your third choice is 27.
With complete agreement on 26.
You had complete agreement on 26.
Somehow that is important.
All right, so we're gonna hold. Now, let's go to the next ones from, what is it, 29
I
over?
think these are all worth kind of skipping over until you get to like 42, 41, 42. I don't think we talked
39,
about
what
40.
about 39? Somebody had some discussion about 39.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I guess you're right. So 39 and 44 both
Okay.
basically don't touch Hackett and Myers. They both, provide reasonable improvement for North Albany. The reason I think 44 was moved higher sort of in the list is that 39 is a little unbalanced, and so is 40. That they're.
it's gonna take, I need to look at some other calculator, I need just a minute as I look at these.
Scroll down to the, so we can see, look at the schools under 12.
What if by Monday, like over this long weekend, people created pros and cons for this
I think
second
that's what we're
set?
gonna get.
Well, but if we're just gonna get the 5 and give them to the board, because ultimately we're not voting, if we could just hit
But
5.
they're gonna wanna see, just like this, the pros and the cons, because that's gonna be part of that discussion. So we have a group that we've not done that with, and so we can do that over the break, get that ready to go, and then we can share that out with the board. Here's where we are, and here are the pros and the cons, and they can have that information so that they can ask questions.
Sorry.
39.
Here, do you wanna come look here? Because I can't see that, I need new glasses.
I don't like the number. At 39.
You don't like the total population numbers?
Yeah, for 39, unless I'm looking at it right.
I think I can,
578.
You got one at 658 and the other at 578.
Well,
That's,
I can just tell you like why we kept some, like, I think working just from the right, like each of them sort of is a different thing in some way, like that, like, I guess 45 and 46 are basically the same, 44 and 39 are basically the same. And then, from there, like 40, 41, all the ones with this same shading are in some ways really similar, so like 40, 41, 45, 46, they all,
Is it fair to say we can limit it from 41 to 46?
yeah, I think we could limit it. Because 40 and 41 have like population issues and they just aren't as good as like
Could you
45.
scroll down and see, so we can see the whole population, because I think that's what some people are looking at. So I think somebody said 39 has a lot of
600.
discrepancy. You got 641, 578, and 658.
Yeah, but if you move, where is dual? If you move dual to that school that has the 578.
Mhm.
Which is,
Yeah, you have.
well, that's what 46 is.
Okay.
oh, okay.
Yeah, if you take dual out of 39 and you stick it in Myers, it's 46.
And it's the exact same thing,
So
okay.
Yeah.
39 equals 46 in the dual.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably the
Except
easiest.
that's not true though, right? Hold on,
Yeah,
hold on. Go. Give me that. 39 has
Oh, I'm sorry, Sheridan and Skylar are switched, but
Yeah,
they're,
and New Scotland and Pine Hills. Yeah,
okay, then I'm
So
sorry,
what?
I was wrong, I don't know. It's 39 and 44, really similar, yeah, DCS, New Scotland, Sheridan, yeah.
yeah, that's right. 39 is 44.
Okay, yeah, 39 is 44 with dual moves. Okay, so with that said, it was like, well, if I'm gonna pick one, I'll pick the one with the population that's better. Like, there was nothing else.
I am okay with 44, that's the one I had the time to look at the most. Doesn't mean I'm not okay with others, but that's the one I took a lot of time to look at today,
Right.
in terms of comparing my pros and cons, like sitting here. 44, I'm okay with that being in the running.
I think that we should actually, yes, I think we should keep that. We should not.
Is there a unanimous consensus
So I
for
think we should
42?
absolutely keep it.
Yeah.
Absolutely keep it, yeah.
To keep it?
Yeah.
Is there anyone opposed?
All in favor?
That's number two.
Clerk,
Can I
call
see the
the roll.
grades for that, 44?
You wanna see buttons?
Great, great.
There's 44 is the one with no red.
Yeah, so this is the one that, just by completely reorganizing, not even completely, because it just doesn't move very many. So,
If it's at all helpful, I'm just looking at the survey that's out there currently, and there, we have 66 people who have responded so far.
Oh, that's
On the transportation question, 59 of the 66 are neutral or very important that they're closer to home. And that includes, 48 of those 66 respondents say it's very important that they're closer to home.
Okay.
Long way to go in the survey,
With or without transportation?
so they prefer to be closer to school and don't care if they get a bus.
That's kind of that survey went out, and we have other scenarios, some of which I think are better than the ones you've just offered. I was a little
There'll be a
surprised.
lot, there'll be a lot more community engagement going forward.
Yeah.
I didn't hear what you said.
There'll be a lot more community engagement.
So I don't think I actually asked this one.
It's in an
It's
email.
about an hour before this meeting.
Well, it just came out.
That's why
no, my wife got it and I didn't get it. I don't know.
Are you guys,
I think 46 is pretty, like, if you're gonna compare 45 and 46, that's another one where it's just like, well, it's pretty much, kind of does the same coloring, thing to grades. And it's about the same amount of change. So this
wait,
is
which one? Sorry.
just the difference between 45 and 46. So like, I think I made 45 and I was like, oh, I could do better. And that's how we got 46.
So what is the key differences?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm looking, because the scores,
No, I just can't.
what are the key differences between 45 and 46? Because that score wise, they got the same colors.
I
Ash.
think
Ash is.
Ash and Dual,
Oh, Hackett is pretty high for 45.
Ash, Dual, Eagle Point, and Arbor Hill, like, move around some, but it, I mean, I don't know, I mean, you can see what kind of changed.
Score wise, 45 and 46 are pretty.
Yeah, they're similar. But I'm trying to look at, are they terrible?
I mean,
Similar.
I think 46 is slightly better than 44. It takes slightly less from Hackett. Myers is about the same. It has a negligible effect on North Albany. So I would say like 46 is
What has a negligible effect on the problem?
just whatever the change is from 45 to 46. Like 46 is, I think, just like better.
if you scroll down towards the, we can look at the school. Now, I can think about is the transportation that you would prefer to be closer to the
Yeah.
school. And I'm looking at, well, the other thing I realized from these scatter maps, which are so helpful, thank you for those, is that there's sort of different color squares, being squared, we're trying to avoid people being from more than a mile and less than 1.5 miles, because we all understand why that's bad. But it's also meaningless, like, if going from school to school, it's just a meaningless measurement. It's not where we all knew that, but seeing it really drove it home, like,
Well, that's
measuring
why,
from school to school is silly, but the students are all.
well, that's why when I was looking at
Yeah.
travel, you know, like, if this one happens to be in town, when I looked at Ash and I saw them spread out, I'm like, they are not
You
conventional.
can't measure it, they don't look at Ash.
We just can't plan.
They don't
for
even
that.
live near
We
us,
can't
just my
plan for
neighborhood
that.
preference.
But when I looked at, it's like, let me find one that's not spread out. Why don't I spread out one that's?
What's toast among the magnet schools?
Delaware. So even though Delaware has some spreading out, they're kind of got a little pocket.
You can kind of say,
So-
okay, they mostly live right around here.
And it is near Delaware, so I used the mileage between Delaware and each middle school as sort of a metric, because they are kind of condensed around that, and there could be some accuracy with that. Which is why, like, 46 isn't looking horrible right now, just with the little bit I've been looking at, but between this survey result and what I looked at before, sending New Scotland, any scenario that sends New Scotland and North Albany transportation or being close to my school wise is gonna be a challenge.
Except the problem with North Albany is that it's not close to anyone.
No, but there are a few that it's not as, either it's not as terrible anyway, or they're gonna be traveling, that schools are gonna be traveling no matter what school they go to.
But then you create, yes, and if you take those schools instead of North Albany, you create schools, I mean, you're gonna create a school like we have now, where we have all like, kids of color in our school, which we're not supposed to consider, but that's, I mean, you don't have diverse school, is what I'm saying, culturally, race-wise, or any otherwise. And that's not something, I mean, that, to me, that's not, that should be a factor, right?
Yeah.
If we only consider the distance, which, well, North Albany is far.
Almost everybody in nobody's gonna get a ride, right?
Yeah.
It's a question of how long is the ride?
Exactly.
Well, when you look at it, again, not that, this is somewhat arbitrary, like mentally, I'm thinking, well, Pine Hills is closer to North Albany than New Scotland, but when you look at this, that is not the case. New Scotland is closer to North Albany, according to, yeah.
I don't know about.
New Scotland to North Albany is 3.9, and Pine Hills to North Albany is 4.6. It's, yeah,
How's that possible?
depends on what, I don't know what route was, I don't know what was used for these numbers, but
New
just
Scotland.
based on.
Well, yeah, New Scotland has to go all the way across town too.
But I thought you said that Pine Hills is farther. No, you said?
No, Pine Hills is further.
From North
Pine
Albany to
Hills
New
is,
Scotland Elementary?
Pine Hills is 4.6 to North Albany,
This is building to building.
building to building, not where kids live. And New Scotland to North Albany is 3.9.
I didn't, to me, that's a little bizarre.
Ironically, I wouldn't have guessed this, Eagle Point is 3.1.
Right, but
To North Albany.
Yeah, because
School to
you
school
can
is.
Just, yeah,
take the,
Yeah.
I think it's more useful to be like, okay, the center of this scatter plot is here, the center of this scatter plot is here. What are those distances?
Yeah.
That's gonna be the actual lived experience of families.
Coming from Eagle Point, which you also, Eagle Point has the most spread out area of all the schools.
of the non-magnet.
Oh,
Yeah.
It's a
Kids,
giant.
Oh,
yeah.
non-magnet schools, kids.
Yeah.
Out all over the
The
place.
factor zone is really big.
Even Montessori is a little bit more.
Yeah, I couldn't even find, I could use parent logics, like, if you were a parent, these were your kids, where would you think they would go to school? Eagle Point, it's like,
Yeah.
I can't even come up with a logical spot. It's like, you could make an argument for any of these. There are a lot of students who live near any of these schools.
The same as in Delaware, community school, you just, there's not for everything.
Between Concord and
Concord and
Myers.
Myers.
Exactly, they're both very well, yeah.
so are we ready to make some decisions for 39 through 46? Is it?
I gotta go.
I haven't looked at all of them. I looked at 39, I looked at 44, and I looked at 45 and 48.
This is what I wonder if we should say by Sunday night, everyone, you know.
Well, I think
Well, you need to narrow it down, so that you're not doing pros and cons.
I think well, enough of these have a corollary that I think it's really from 42 on is how we, in trying to make this beforehand, we were like, let's pick 5. So I think it's 42.
I'm fine with narrative 42 to 42.
Well, and even on a surface look, 42 has a high population at North Albany. Not to say it should be totally ruled out, but just surface look. As opposed to 43, he doesn't have any population issues, but I have to look at this.
Well, 42 takes a huge bite out of Myers to improve Hackett. So, and it improves Hackett to over 50% better than either of the other schools. But I just think it's an outlier. It's not, it doesn't represent balance and some sort of equity.
I think that I wrote down that I liked about it, and again, part of what happened is that I'm trying to group them together to make it easier to understand the numbers are changing, so that left my notes fairly confused. But if I remember correctly, I think I liked it had less change, 1, 2, which one? So number 42 only has 5 changes, which is in the lower end. Anything with 4 or 5 changes, I think is better than the ones with 6 or 7 changes. And I thought that the scores balanced better, they just weren't as far apart from each other.
I know.
But
you're
again, I have to
looking
redo
at
that now.
42, but am I the only one thinking, if I look at 43, that does not look like that at all. That's like a lot. Right?
42 doesn't look like what?
42, am I interpreting that right? Like the packet, ELA and Mount scores, this is not,
They go up.
they go up?
Yeah.
No, they're red.
Green.
You're green.
Oh, I'm sorry, 43, I was saying the wrong number.
43, they definitely go down.
Packet, not,
And for those reasons, I'd say 42 and 43 are kind of less optimal than the other ones, just because, you know, you don't want to improve both scores on Hackett, but you also don't want to take, you know, 2 10-point bites out of Hackett. So I think 42 and 43 are more problematic than the other 3, I guess.
the other 3, 44, 45, and 46.
Yeah.
Right now, I want to see the neighborhoods that are going to North Albany.
What do you mean?
You just want to.
I want to see if the neighborhoods close to North Albany are going to North Albany. I'm not crazy about,
Well, I mean, here
North
I
Albany
built,
getting a new elementary school and then shipping those kids off.
but here I can show you this though. I built that in the old thing, neighborhood grouping. When you build it, this is the neighborhood grouping. You know, this is where everyone lives. These kids live over by Myers. These kids live off Western Avenue. They could all shoot down Western. These kids live over there. It just creates completely unacceptably unbalanced.
I'm not saying the kids far out that bus to Arbor Hill. I'm saying the kids in, wherever North Albany, the kids closest to the school district to North Albany go to North Albany.
Isn't that what it is right now, or am I
Yeah, so
wrong?
those two, and then figure out something to put in there.
So I'm sorry, I'll build it. What do you want? Arbor Hill and Sheridan?
You have it already.
No, it's what we have, isn't that what we have right now?
Yeah, 25 was that scenario.
No, meaning, if we're talking about what's North Hall.
43.
It's what,
Yeah, right
it's
now,
what it is right now, yes?
it's Sheridan, Skyline, Arbor Hill.
Are the ones that-
All,
Whatever it is right now is in the leftmost.
Yeah.
Is that right?
But I'm saying, doesn't that answer what he's asking for?
Well, the two neighborhoods then stick in other schools and see what happens.
Oh,
Do you like 43? That seems to be as close to what you're saying, like it balances population,
Yeah.
does that, what you're asking?
What about the other two schools, Hackett and Myers? Do they have those neighborhoods in there? I know Eagle Point doesn't count for any of that.
I mean, yeah, DCS, the kids live off Second, so they can either walk up Whitehall or they could walk down,
yeah, I just have it.
you know, Delaware, so that they live near either one, basically. Eagle Point doesn't live anywhere. Giffen
closer to home.
I would say they'll just shoot up second in this, that same, they'll go right up second and then up more, up Whitehall. Montessori doesn't really live anywhere. Ash. The kids from that scatter map basically live on a complete path between Ash and, between Myers and Hackett. So, I mean, it works well enough. I think there might be some hurt feelings or, you know, Ash has felt that Myers is its buddy school.
Yeah, it's all over. I think
Ash is all
most three
over.
magnet schools are pretty much all over.
Oh, yeah, the magnet schools,
That's
way
over.
super spread.
Yeah, and then I'd say Dual, Skylar, and Toast are all within reasonable distance of Hackett. So I guess if you're looking for like the most neighborhood order, I guess I'd say
There is a
43.
little bit of time. Yeah.
But then it's 43 and 44, that we already said 44 is gone.
No, 44 is good.
No,
44 was
44 is
good.
good. 44 is in.
Yeah, so it's going. It's going to go to the.
Oh, you're
But I
right.
think the one question this raises about 43 is like, is this just too low? It's two huge
That's-
bites out of Hackett.
That's not-
It increases North Albany kind of too high, maybe. And it, you know, like, it really might have, I don't know how far is too far with grades, but I think I think each one maybe has something worth keeping around for its own point of discussions. To me, I might keep 43 around just because it's the most neighborhood sense making. 44 I'd keep around because it does the least. 46 I'd keep around because it's balanced. 45, I guess I'd keep around because everyone gets busing, but like each one sort of has its own.
So are we ready to narrow down the new
Yeah.
scenarios?
What did you say about 42? I would keep that too.
42 takes huge bites out of Myers in order to improve Hackett in both categories. I just think that's like, you can't, I mean, I guess we can, but it takes,
Yeah.
Plus it puts North Albany at, it puts North Albany close to 700.
41. How about 41? That has one magnet in each school, but I can live with that population levels.
I mean, personally, if you're talking about 6, I would be like, let's just look at these 6 this year.
yeah,
I don't necessarily feel we need to narrow it down. You know, I like the sort of parent law, I think we're similar, like,
yeah.
what do you call neighborhood schools or parent law, that like, I actually coded that, okay, this one is 5 positives and 2 negatives, this is 3 versus 4, like, actually coming up with the data, and I'm gonna need to redo it, because the changes in numbers is completely confusing. But yeah, to me, just dealing with the 6 is not too big a number, but,
No, but, I mean, what is the 6 one? Because right now we have 26,
You have 26, you have 44.
and we're looking at between 43, 45, and 46.
no, I guess I mean, the old 3 we've already analyzed. So what I'm saying is,
Well, she's saying that we picked 25, 26, and 27.
so we've got those 3, but we've already all looked at that.
I would probably drop 25 and 27 if we're trying to get to 5 only. Like I would keep 26 and I would pick 43.
But I haven't had a
I'm
chance
not ready
to
to vote on
take a
4
deep enough
Ps
look
yet.
at these. I haven't had a chance to look at these.
I'm
deep
sorry.
enough. I haven't had enough chance to look at these deep
Yeah.
enough to know.
Oh, not that we're voting, but just as like, hey, these are 5 that we should consider, because like, I think we can say 43 through 46 be the ones in the 20s. They just do more on all the categories. It's like,
All we are saying is that we are taking a deeper dive into this other blue ones, and actually writing down pros and cons, right?
They analyze
To
it, yeah.
bring to the board meeting next week.
What's 41 grades? We go up to the grades.
41 grades are decent.
Packets.
So is 39 out?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's out. What about 40?
No.
That's out. 41?
I don't mind 41 too much. I don't like the bad grade.
I don't like the, English,
Population.
or the population.
So
Like
how
one
many for
magnet school.
41? Let's see by show of hands.
I like the magnet school. I like diversity. I'm with that. I want
I'll,
That's 2. 42, how many?
Before I text about 42, just from the perspective of the school people here, I mean, this 16 versus 22, that's a lot. Yeah,
It's that we're taking it out of Myers to improve Hackett, which just, to me, is like a fundamental misfire. Like, if we're taking points from either Myers or
but I'm
Hackett,
saying we're putting such a significant lower.
we're bringing Hackett up to 31. It's more than 50% higher of a score than the other two
Well,
schools.
I'm looking at putting Myers down to 16 in comparison to 22. I mean, I don't know from a school.
yeah, it's a
perspective,
big,
is that
it's
a
a
lot?
very big hit.
Is that, I'm asking the district, I'm like, would that be considered a big hit? Like,
Well, when you look at dropping Myers and considering, I mean, it's a very good point that Myers was on the borderline for receivership. And so to significantly drop the potential achievement for that school, that almost means that we might be looking at that school going into receivership.
So that's
Now, I don't
I'm
know what
asking.
the guidelines are going to be. They may, say they're gonna give us a year or whatever, but that is definitely something to think about.
Well, and that's what I'm asking, so I'm not wrong to think like 16, that's really a big drop.
Yeah.
Especially if it's also going to put a school close to 700, I would vote no for.
Yeah, so think about 41 and 42.
For me,
both out
like,
now, right?
that's, I had to ask that question to decide whether I would vote for 42, so I'm not gonna vote for 42 for that reason.
What about 43?
I'm looking.
I'll vote with them. If you want.
43 is not bad, but I don't like the magnet schools.
I'm not liking the scores, but compared to some of the other choices, it's, not as big.
So I'm gonna ask the
I think
question, I'm gonna
43
ask the question a different way for 43. Would you be willing to analyze 43
Yeah.
based on the pros and the cons?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so there's 4 for 43. Okay, what about 44?
We already said
Yes.
that.
That's right, we already have that one. 45?
On the same time as that, actually, can you go down to the school?
I'd be willing to analyze it.
45. What was it, repeat, go up? Yeah.
So 45, would that be one that you would be willing to analyze?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4. Okay.
I'm concerned, but,
And what about 46?
Yeah. Can you go down? Yeah. Can you go back up again? Right now, mine goes.
You want me to show you the list?
When we do this next round of analysis, would it feel free to either sort of agree to have open emails where we all are emailing our thoughts to each other, or right now it's all BCC'd, I guess. Or have a shared Google Doc or shared Google Sheets, so we can see each other's comments.
We can do a shared Google Doc with the group.
I would find that, I just feel like that would allow us to have sort of communication in between meetings, which I think we can get good work done in between meetings in addition to ad meetings.
And if you want to do, I want to do a little use a Jamboard on the Google Sheet, which does the same way, but you can actually just, I don't know if you can see who is doing what.
Jim,
Yeah.
so 46, are we yes or no?
Okay, I got it now.
Yes.
46.
Yes, that's 2 yeses.
For six
Three
has an
yeses.
even population, its grades are alright. It doesn't make that many changes.
I have other things to analyze, but or yes. So at least.
Okay, so what we're going to look at, and I hate to give homework, but by Monday, we would need your pros and cons for scenario 43, 44, 45, 46, and then anything else that you want to add to 26, we can definitely do that. We will renumber them, but put the actual number in parentheses. So it says scenario 1, 26, scenario 2, 43, so that way you know.
27 are out, or we were potentially.
Excuse me?
Is 25 and 27 out?
Yes, I thought we,
Okay.
No, wait, 25, 26, and 27, they're still being considered.
are they still being considered? Because there was
Maybe not what's
only,
being presented to the board, but I thought we were gonna analyze.
so you've already analyzed 25, 26, and 27. Did you want to keep those?
Keep them while we analyze 43, 44, 45, and 46, and then when we narrow down the 40s, then we can figure out, like, I'm just throwing out these numbers. I don't know if 45 is better than 27, like, I can't.
Got it.
I need to look at those 40s to decide, are they worth
Okay,
knocking out 25 and 27?
okay.
But we don't need to do any pros or cons or discussions on it.
No, because you've already
We
done
already did
that.
that,
You've already
yeah.
done that. Okay, but if you look at them and let's say you wanted to add something, we can definitely do that.
If we find out something, yeah.
Mhm.
Are we using the same form from the previous email? No, right? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, we'll have to do a different one. And then you have your backup information, so what we'll end up doing is just putting the list of schools that go where, and then pros and cons very similar to what you had.
And this doc is available online. I think it was sent out yesterday.
Yeah, well, it was sent out before, you know, it's the same, it's a live
Okay,
link, so
it's live,
any,
yep.
it's a live link.
If you access it on your Google Drive, you can find it in your.
Is it helpful for me to create a new tab and put all of these on its own
That
tabs?
would be very, very good.
Yes.
Final seven.
Yes.
Yeah, why not?
So 25, 26, 27, 43, 44, 45, 46, all on the same tab, because those are the ones that we're gonna be looking at.
Or you could just hide. what
Keep
we
those
might be
numbers.
putting in it now.
Okay, don't change that.
I would just hide it myself.
And then,
All right, I'll-
model it from now on, you're done.
I hope I am done with this project so much.
Okay, so here's the thing, we have a board meeting on the 2nd, which is Thursday of next week. So we need to, either we can do an in-person or we can do a virtual check-in, because we will need to kind of walk through what that presentation is going to look like.
So can I just ask, like, just what, I guess I could picture, whatever, we'll analyze these, but I could picture ending the survey with, can everyone rank them in order? Because if we all happen to agree one of them is number one, like, that'd be cool. So like, are we trying to present one or three or four, like, are we giving choices or what are we trying to do?
We are trying to present several scenarios to the board so that they can analyze and look at them. They have been watching the process, so they've been hearing it. We are also providing them with the information so that they're going to be ready to ask questions. If there are questions that they can provide ahead of time, I'm happy to get those questions and share them with you. But we do need to kind of talk about what our presentation is going to look like. If each person wants to share out, once we get to, I don't know how many we're gonna have. If we have 5 scenarios, if we have 3 scenarios, maybe 3 people can talk about, here's the scenario, here's the logic behind it, here are the pros and the cons. And then each one is done, and then we ask the board to, engage in that conversation. We open it up for questions.
There's been a tricky situation. My community's I've already gotten many texts and emails like, what do you think about the scenarios that were sent out in the survey? Which now are not. And I was like, hold up, just to tell you, because there are scenarios that I like better than the ones, I was pretty surprised to see those sent out. So the survey is one of the odds of where we're at in our process.
But it still gives you an idea, because we have to start getting some information. We can't just sit back and wait. So we have to start getting that. And that was based on the first 5 that the group talked about. Now, yes, we have more information, but that would be some of the follow-up conversation.
Sure. I thought we were gonna have I thought there was gonna be shared planning of the survey, but that's fine. It's out there.
Did I miss where, I'm looking at the survey, did I miss where the scenario?
They were, you have to fill out the first few pages, we can have like a report.
And then you go,
And then it shows up.
Oh, so you answer the, okay.
Yeah.
I honestly think that more transparency and more information.
Absolutely.
More people cannot make the claim, they don't know what's going on.
well, but then you also,
That's important.
you also have to look at information over, like, we've been doing this for a minute, so we're into it.
Yeah.
But if people are just coming on, if we were to share with them 8 scenarios.
No, I would love for the survey to add a scenario down the line. I would have fewer questions. I'm just trying to always.
Like, who knew we were gonna come up with 8 more scenarios? Who knew that was going to
It is your
happen?
intention though to send out, like, if we want to keep like 3 of these new ones, you will send it out again?
Okay, now I'm seeing.
Well, it'll probably be a little bit later, because we want to get the feedback, we want to give people time to at least respond to this. We want to at least have the board able to ask questions, and then if we need to do the follow-up survey, we will, because we also have to go out and get that.
We have to go out and do the
That
community
info.
forum.
Yeah.
I have a question about the survey, like, obviously it was sent out, it was sent out to the email. I envision myself, I want to make sure this is okay, like, I'm gonna text, like, my people and my friends and post on Facebook pages and be like, if you know someone who doesn't read their emails verbally, like, that's okay to do, right? Go, like, pay attention to the fact the survey exists, because we want as much input, that's,
And we may have a revision of the survey in a week or 2 weeks. We may have a revision of the survey. I can't say yes, definitely, and I can't say no.
yeah.
We need
But
to see where we
I
are
should-
in the process.
But I'm okay to like somewhat aggressive, please share that this survey exists and we want people to give input.
Very aggressive.
What we should
Okay.
consider now.
Good, that's
the
what
survey's only been out there.
I'm just making sure, yeah.
In front of you.
The survey's only been out there a few hours. I have a question. Would we consider taking the scenarios off the survey? So we're still getting the information about how do you value transportation, how do you value academics, all those other things. We're still getting that, because I'm just concerned that then people get invested, like, oh, you like this one, and we're like, well, this one is actually better for you'll actually like this one better. Would the survey be better without the scenario questions now that they're not,
There
we
will
may have
be-
better scenarios to offer?
There will be a new survey that clearly says these are 5 draft scenarios that you've developed, and we'll have, and that there will be more information. There will be new scenarios. Whatever happens from this point is going to go to the board, and we're going to come away from the board with probably fewer than we go to the board with. And then we'll go back out to the community with what comes out of that meeting. And so here's where the board is.
Confusing.
Here are the finalists or
That's how
whatever.
they did it when they were trying to decide how to build our fourth middle school. When they were trying to decide how many middle schools we have, and it was like, do you tear this one down and build this one? I felt like there was like a survey and it got narrowed down, and then it was another.
Survey for that one.
No, I just meant that there were, like, now I know, now that I'm here, I'm like, how did it go, for like, there was a lot of the presentations, like, 24 of the new 19. Where did that come from?
I guess, could we just rank them all at the end? Because I'm imagining we're gonna have like, we're all gonna pick like 5, 6, and 7. We'll probably have one common, or so like we can name like the bottoms and the tops, and we might just be able to name the 5.
So you have 7, you can rank them 1 through 7 as a committee. You could go through and do your ranking 1 through 7.
While we're here or go from?
Oh, no, after you finish the program.
No, I don't mean while we're here now, I'm saying when we come, we can just be prepared to have that when we come.
We can do that, be ready when we come back for our next meeting.
Now, we need to look at a time to prepare for the second, right? You're saying-
Yes,
But it might be able to be done just by like email, if we all just rank them on our rankings, and then she can look at it and be like, y'all rank this one number one, woo!
Well,
Y'all rank this one number two,
What I heard the superintendent saying though is we do need to have we need to have a logistics conversation about, like, who, is it gonna, if it's 5 scenarios, do we each speak? Is it one person speaking on behalf
well,
of?
I am just using that as an
Yeah, I mean,
example.
I'm
Right, but I think at our next meeting, because that will be hopefully looking at the 30th, if we can come right back on the 30th, then we can define what that's going to look like.
The 29th better for anyone else on the 30th? I can do the 30th, although the 29th.
I have to work until about 7.
On the
You have to
29th.
work on
On the
what
30th,
day?
on the 30th.
On Monday.
29th any better for you?
Yeah, yeah.
I can do 29.
Yeah, I mean, I have a conflict on the 30th, that would be really hard to miss, but not impossible. On the 30th. I could do the 29th.
I can do the 20th.
Is there anyone who can't do the 29th?
I think everyone else is good.
No, the 30th, actually, as I look, I have another committee meeting that night.
None of us can do the 30th. We all.
So the 29th, is there anyone who can't do the 29th?
What about Wednesday the 1st?
I cannot do it.
It is a little close.
Well, wait, what was the problem with it? Was there a problem with the 29th?
No, the 30th.
Oh, okay, so the 29th looks good then,
Yeah.
okay,
Do you want us to go to this board meeting on Thursday?
absolutely.
I'm not sure if I can make it until probably 7. It starts at 6?
Starts at 6:30, but
30?
there's typically a superintendent's report and a district update, and that doesn't
Comments,
usually end
right.
until about 7:15, 7:20-ish. So if I need to stretch for you to get here, we can do that
I
Well,
could, so I-
is comments at the beginning or at the end?
at the beginning.
So that would stretch it a little too, right?
Yeah, but it just depends, but
Depends.
I go by my report, which
Yeah.
usually takes about 45 minutes. So then you have, other items on the agenda, public comment, routine consent.
Right, I might send my wife to my place.
Okay,
How much it looks like.
She is very outspoken.
okay, so we have Monday the 30th, and then on the 2nd,
No, Monday the
please
29th.
I'm sorry, Monday the 29th, and we'll do 6 o'clock. And then on the 2nd is the actual board meeting, so 6:30 in this room is where we'll be.
Oh, here?
Oh, everything's in here.
Well,
It
that
is
makes
here.
it easier.
How many people show up for that? Is it still a little crowded for it, or?
No,
It's
it's
not a
usually,
public, it's not a public thing.
it is a public meeting, but usually we have quite a few people that are virtual.
Okay.
So you'll be fine. We usually space everything out, tables are set up, we've got the chairs out, so you should be fine. And we have an overflow room.
Okay.
I'm trying to get these on my calendar, so November
So-
29th, 6 to 7:30.
So 6:30 on the 2nd, then on Monday,
Yeah, I have my.
29th, 6 PM. Okay? All right,
And then the, homework. When should we expect the form, the pros and cons, the new scenarios?
tomorrow.
Yeah, it would help if you put what they are on here in parentheses. That's how I found the discrepancies, because I'm like, I'm gonna assume number one is 24, but I don't want to assume, so I'm gonna start cross-referencing, and that's when I was like, wait, something.
Well, that's how so if you look
Yeah.
on what we've given you, it says scenario 1, 24, but that's gonna change
Yep,
based
yep,
on
yep.
the 7 that we have right now,
yep, that's fine.
okay?
It helps to have it written that way before.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. Have a great evening. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. We appreciate all of your hard work.
These were all better.
Who knew you would have so much fun?
Thank you very much. I'm totally giving all the credit to Doreen for being like, no, tools are done in school and they should be considered like it, and we can model it. You like modeling it, do this. All right. It's great.
When I go away from that, he's like, so I reread everything. Wait, what number is that?